Hello, BookTube. I've got a tag for you today on this Tag Tuesday, the 1st of April, a beautiful spring day. A little bit cold for my liking, but still perfectly fine for a first thing in the morning trip to the Brattle Bookshop and a couple of other errands. It was a lot of fun. Minus a couple of public service announcements that are unfortunately, very common when you're dealing with public transportation. If I could put them on a big billboard and show them to all of Boston every day so that everybody's on their P's and Q's, that would be great. I had to deal with them. I've had to deal with them my whole life. I'm not looking forward to the day when I can no longer deal with them. Uh, if you are out in public and you are on public transportation and you decide to turn an ordinary everyday activity into the law of the effing jungle, you cannot complain if you lose. Simple as that. If you're going to do that, if you're going to turn it into that, then you have to abide by that. Simple as that. Animals in the jungle, living by the law of the jungle, don't go running to the transit police or to their lawyer. they just suffer the results of it. So if you are standing blocking one half of a doorway of a crowded subway car and the car pulls into its station and the door malfunctions so that one half of the door doesn't open and the only half that does is the one you're in front of, that means you are completely blocking the only exit within 15 feet. And if a grumpy old man stands in front of you and obviously is waiting for you to move your ass and you don't do that, maybe you quip something like, well, you have trouble walking. It's possible, since you have made it the law of the jungle, it's possible that that grumpy old man is going to slam into you like you were an orange traffic cone, like you weren't human at all. It's possible that that grumpy old man is just going to walk right through you to get through that one open doorway that you're completely blocking. And if that happens, and maybe it hurts you, I don't know, maybe in the scuffle a knee goes into your groin or a foot comes down on your ankle in the wrong way, well, you know, that's what you get when you turn things into the law of the jungle. It isn't that grumpy old man's fault that you did that. You did that. anyway, it was a beautiful day, and despite the PSAs, it was a beautiful day, and my spirits were high until I got back to Hyde Cottage and realized that it's Tag Tuesday and that no one had tagged me for any reason because I smell. And this certainly applies to Christopher Russell, who did this tag just today and went out of his way to tag his precious Joe Spivey, but not me. So I figured I would do the tag anyway. I mean, when you are an outcast, a leper, a pariah, then you have to do tags on your own, and it's a good tag. It's the Spring is in the Air tag. It was created by Uncommon Reader and Beyond Books. I'll leave links to both their videos, and it's all about the change in the air, which is way too grudging for my taste. I realize that there are large chunks of the country that are very cold, still in snow. It's not like that here, but I wish that it were warmer. I really do. I wish that it were full blown hot, triple digits. But nevertheless, technically speaking, it is spring. So, and that's all the props are about that. So prop number one is Spring Chicks. Name a book that made you feel warm and fuzzy. I don't generally feel warm and fuzzy, but if we mean just general affirmation, I got some pictures here so that I'd be a real booktuber. I've recommended this many times. Margot Kaufman's book Clara, The Early Years, which is all about a snorting, pampered, fussy pug that Margot Kaufman owns, who rules everything and goes everywhere with her and is known to everybody and loves treats. This is in one level very familiar territory. It is a familiar subgenre to have affectionate memoirs of dogs. One of the key differences in this book, aside from how wonderfully it's written, it's just so energetically, funnily written. But aside from that, another key difference is that most dog books have that chapter at the end. And if you've read them, will know the chapter I mean, the one that's going to rip your guts out. Merle's Door, for instance, and a whole bunch of others, a whole bunch of other books. They always have that chapter. Inevitable, you would think, when you're dealing with a species that lives to 15 years old. But this book doesn't have that chapter. It rather wonderfully doesn't have that chapter. It just leaves things open. which means you can finish this with a smile on your face, no matter how many times you reread it. I don't know how many times I've reread it. Uh, then our next prompt is April Showers, a book that is set near, in, or on the water, or that has water in the title. And this is a reread. I actually have a recent reread that I've been doing. I don't know if it's the beginning of anything big, of anything comprehensive. I reread Captain Marriott's book, Mr. Midshipman Easy. This is a rather attractive AI cover. I reread this book for the first time in 30 years, something like that. Marriott comes before everybody, comes before Patrick O'Brien, he comes before Forrester. And therefore you have to adjust your reading just a bit because he is a little fussy. He's a little antiquated, just a little antiquated. But he was enormously popular in his day. And I forget what it was. I was reading a literary essay of some kind or other. I have a whole wall of literary essays, prefaces, books about books and whatnot. And it wasn't about Marriott, and it wasn't about Mr. Midshipman Easy. It was a reference, just a tossed off reference made in some other piece that lodged this in my mind and made me go and reread Mr. Midshipman Easy, which is really, really good. It is really, really good. You have to get used to the slightly creaky language. You have to get used to the diction of a different era, even more so than with Forrester. But if you do, and with a cover like this, I was willing, that you're going to get a lot of repayment for that. And this takes place, I'd say 60% on the water. So this counts. The thing is, though, I don't know if I'm going to reread all of Marriott. I've never done that. I'm pretty sure I've read all of his novels, but never one after the other, never as a systematic kind of thing. Might be fun to do. I don't know. We shall see. Then the next prompt is spring break. Talk about a time you took a break from reading and why. And this wouldn't be all that big a thing. I take breaks from reading all the time. And by that, I don't mean that I stop reading to make, the rice or whatever, or to go on the subway and deal out public service announcements, for instance. For instance, your big dog is not a toy, and he is most certainly not a weapon. And if you're trying to treat him that way, if you're getting off on how nervous he's making other people, you really shouldn't do that. And you especially shouldn't do it around me. Anyway, you might think that I'm talking about that, the times when I'm not literally reading. But no, I'm talking about taking a break from books as completely as can be, where I'm not thinking about them, where I'm not even in their world. And I do that several times a day. My best friend, my best friends in my entire life have not only not wanted to read, but not been able to read. A totally non-literary world that I can step into. Yes, I'm talking about you. I can step into that world and do regularly. And I don't mean, when I say that I step into that world, I don't mean that on dog walks I'm looking at my phone. I mean that I'm in that world, which is not literary at all. It's a complete break from books. I have to come back to books when I'm done with that. Let's see here. Question number 4, Swallow's Homecoming, a book or an author you always go back to for comfort. Again, with the comfort. I guess these are non-comfortable times. The example that I came up with here is not any one particular book. It's a type of book. I've mentioned it on this channel many times before. Old New Yorker cartoons and old New Yorker covers. I love. I'm not a huge, unambiguous fan of them in the present moment. But in the past, I love them. I have a ton of New Yorker cartoon collections. I have a big collection of New Yorker covers. And they are wonderful. They are wistful, often wise beyond their years, reminders of long gone times. And seem, although nobody connected with the New Yorker would have liked this description, they seem innocent. It happens a few times a year that I will feel that something has reached up to a certain gauge limit, and I will just chuck things aside and spend an afternoon in a New Yorker cartoon collection. That happens a few times a year. So I would say that counts as going back to it for comfort. Then question number 5, Blooms, a book that started slowly but blossomed to be one of your favorite reads. Uh, I would say Crime and Punishment in any translation that you want. The Constance Garnett translation, for instance, I would say Crime and Punishment, which I thought and still do think gets off to a fairly muggy start. It's a paralyzed book. It's poleaxed. Everybody's hot. It's a heat wave. Everybody's gross. Everybody smells. Nobody knows what they're really about. Uh, I found that I have often read critics of and book prefaces about Dostoevsky, about Crime and Punishment, say that the book in the Russian doesn't read that way. That it feels, yes, stifled by the heat, stifled by moral apathy right from the beginning, but not static. That it's a jumpy, nervous book. And I had not seen that in English translations until the Michael Katz translation, and then I did see it. So I'm not sure how prevalent it is in the Russian. I can't read the thing in the Russian, but even with that, I mean, that does help things. But in the earlier, more Englishified versions of Crime and Punishment, it always struck me that things were taking a while to get off the ground, and then they became great. Uh, so I'm gonna say Crime and Punishment. Question number 6: Eggs in a Basket. 3 books you want to read this spring. There are quite a few books that I want to read this spring. Let me just show you 3. I'm restricted to 3. We have 1. This is Robert Tannenbaum. This is That Day in Dallas. Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill JFK. There are, of course, 3 or 4 books like this every year. There have been for all this time. I imagine there's going to be a bumper crop of them next year, because of tranche of documents that seem largely trivial, but that was released. That is grounds to write a book, and people will do that, I'm sure. But this happened before. This was in galleys and out before then. This is out in May, I think, and it's going to fly in the face of the original Warren Commission. It's going to say, no, Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill the president. He I don't know what Tannenbaum will say. Will he say that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill the president because he wasn't acting alone? Or will he say that Oswald was not involved at all, that he was what he said he was, a patsy? No idea. I'll read it anyway. I'll probably write about it. So that's one of my 3. Then the next one is Lawrence Rees. I think we saw this on this channel. I think this is also a May release. This is the Nazi Mind, which is... I haven't touched it. I haven't dipped a toe into it yet. I intend to read it. It will probably be one of the toughest books that I read this year, because that voting bloc, young men between the ages of 18 and 25, turned out in their millions to elect a fascist dictator in my country just last year. This picture happened in my country just last year. Without that group, it's unlikely that fascist dictator would have been elected. And those faces, those young men in the background there, are currently ransacking my own retirement fund, every other American's retirement fund. They're currently ransacking the government. They have copied source codes, gigantic bodies of information onto thumb drives that are just hanging around on their desk. So this is going to be tough. It's going to, when you're reading books about the pluralistic, artistically advanced, extremely tolerant, culturally advanced country of Germany falling to militant, xenophobic, Germany first fascism, when you're reading books like that in 2025, it's literally impossible to read them in isolation from the world around you. It's literally impossible, at least for me. It's literally impossible to do that. And this is not only that, but it's the aspect of 2025 that bothers me the most. So it's out there to read, but I'm not looking forward to it. And then we can finish up these 3 with something much, much more enjoyable. This is Mark Whitten, and this is King Tyrant, a big natural history of Tyrannosaurus Rex, the world's most fearsome land predator, the most famous dinosaur of them all, an animal with endless charisma. And believe it or not, I've mentioned it on this channel before, we can know a lot about the natural history, not just the bones. This is not just about the kinesthesiology of T-Rex. This their natural history. And we can know a lot about that natural history from the remains that we have and from studying them. We can learn a lot, and have learned a lot. Very good guesses. Very good extrapolations on the data of what life was probably like for these gigantic animals that once upon a time roamed right where I am now. This one right outside the window. Can you imagine? I can only imagine how the hullabaloo that my schnauzer would raise if she saw one of these things. And you can just picture it 30 feet up going, woo. But I have read every T-Rex book. I will read every T-Rex book. To me, the idea that these incredible creatures existed in their millions once upon a time on the ground where so many of us walk, maybe not right outside my window. I'm pretty sure that this was underwater when T-Rex roamed North America. But nevertheless, the whole idea, I am as fascinated by dinosaurs as any 8-year-old. so I'm gladly reading. And there you go. That's three. That's three books in the spring that I'm going to read. Of course, I'm going to read 300 books in the spring, but that's three. Then we have, let's see here. Prompt number 7, Green Pastures, a classic that never gets old. I was going to get all pompous and pedantic and say that classics, by definition, never get old, but of course they do. But here you're encouraged to think about classics that you just love, that you go back to over and over again, similar to earlier questions in the tag. And for me, this time around, I will mention the Canterbury Tales. I love it. I go back to it all the time. It is always fresh. It is always new for me. It's a little bit weird to mention the Canterbury Tales in context of this prompt as though it stood out. I mean, I love it, but it doesn't stand out. My pedantic answer is actually true for me. Classics don't get old. They are always new. There's always something in them that I didn't see before or that I didn't care about before. But let's stick with the Canterbury Tales for now. Then prompt number 8 is Pollen, a book that you're allergic to. And I've alluded to it already. In 2024, my country, the greatest country in the world, the most powerful country in the history of the world, fell to fascism. And there are going to be a ton of books about that, and most of them are going to be applauding that fact. Applauding the fact that American citizens are being abducted from the streets without warrant, without due process, without any accountability, and without subsequent tracking. They just disappeared. Applauding the fact that the United States is trying to bully countries into taking territory from them. There are going to be a slew of books later this year and next year. Just an avalanche of them. Rejoicing in all of that. And I'm allergic to that, definitely. I'm not allergic to any book, but I'm allergic to that. I haven't yet decided my actual approach. I actually need to sit down and think about it because it's not going to... I'm going to have to deal with it before then. Obviously, I'm going to have to deal with it this spring. And a blanket policy in which I just say, I am not going to deal with any books like that feels wrong. It feels like I'm turning my back on history. It is historical. It's entirely negative. It's incredibly horrible. It is the triumph of evil. But it is historic. And some of those books, I don't know. I haven't decided. A blanket prohibition, just a blanket allergy, doesn't seem right. I don't know. I don't know. I still haven't decided. Then we have a bonus prompt. Equinox. Find 2 books on your shelf that have the exact number of pages and talk briefly about them. And here, there's a little bit of fudge factor involved here because you never know with different editions what the page count is going to be. But I found 2 that are within a page of each other. And I can definitely talk about them. The first one is this UK mass market of Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brien. I mentioned Mr. Midshipman Easy. This is also Napoleonic era seafaring fiction. And unlike any of Marriott's books, and unlike Forster's books on Horatio Hornblower, this series is meant to be read in order. Really. This is when our 2 main characters, a naval officer named Jack Aubrey and an Irish spy and doctor named Stephen Matron, meet. This is the book where they meet and where Aubrey gets a command of his own. and where they have adventures together and where they learn to like each other. I don't think by the end of this book they quite love each other. They become each other's best friend. And it doesn't take much longer than the first 4 or 5 books for that to be absolutely cemented, where they're just a part of each other. That doesn't happen in this book, but a lot does. This is just terrific. It could also apply to an earlier prompt in this tag, because it is a little bit slow going when you start this series, when you start this book. Because Patrick O'Brian makes the decision, it's the author's decision, he has to do it one way or another. He makes the decision to dunk you in the terminology of the time period without explaining anything. His characters don't talk in sanded down, modern, accessible ways like they do in, for instance, Hornblower. Here they don't. They talk like they would in their own day, and you are not given any kind of help. You just have to, whether it's personal lingo, the politics of the day, or the workings of a ship under sail, you are not given any help at all. You just have to grope along. The closest that Patrick O'Brian comes to helping you out is that by introducing Stephen Matron, who is a thorough landlubber, he doesn't know anything about the sea or seagoing life, by introducing him and putting him on board vessels, Jack Aubrey and other crew members have to explain things to him, and that what works a little. Doesn't go very far. So you have to, there's a learning curve to this book, but it's well worth it. Oh my, is it well worth it. And then the other book, this is an American edition, but it's about the same number of pages, is this, Frederick Forsyth, The Day of the Jackal. I just reread this and wrote about it on my literary blog, Steve Reads. This is a story of a man named the Jackal who is going to kill Charles de Gaulle. You have that inimitable profile there. He is going to lay down the right paperwork, get the right passes, commission and construct the right gun, make the right plans, pick the right day, and assassinate de Gaulle. And the book is a increasingly breakneck narrative of law enforcement realizing that plan is in the wind and trying to figure out who this person is, where he is, and how to stop him. And I was pleasantly surprised when I reread this just recently for Steve Reads. I was pleasantly surprised at how well it works. And as just a thriller, you would think that it wouldn't work. It certainly wouldn't work as a reread. Because, I'm not spoiling anything to let you know that the Jackal does not succeed. The Jackal does not succeed. This is not alternate history. De Gaulle has the same death that he has in real life. He doesn't have it in this book. He's hale and healthy in this book. Basically the same death that Franklin Delano Roosevelt had. Both of them were just going about a normal day when both of them stopped and said to the person in the room, "I've got a terrific pain," and then keeled over dead. Basically the same death. And enviable in that way, right? Because no decay, no sloughing off. They were perfectly themselves, quipping and joking and talking and thinking and caring about things, and then they were gone. Shock for everybody else, but the way to go, I would think. But no, you're not spoiling anything, but you would think that since you know that, and since once you've read the book, you know what happens at the end in the incandescent final chapters, that you would never want to reread it. And yet I loved rereading it. So there you go. These are roughly the same amount of pages with the UK and the American edition. And that is this tag. That is the Spring in the Air tag. The only thing left is to tag people. But nobody's tagged me. Nobody likes me. Because I smell. And besides, a number of people are doing this, so I don't know who's done it and who's not. I will fall back on the blanket statement that Christopher Russell made in his video. It won't be the same, because his blanket statement was, if you're watching this video and you haven't done this tag and you want to, feel free to do it, unless you're Steve. I'm not going to be that petty. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say just the general admonition that if you want to do this, feel free. These are good questions. It's a fun tag. To start off spring, I know a lot of people who are watching this video are definitely not dealing with spring-like weather. I know that's true. There's even the slightest hint in the weather forecast here in Boston of snow later in the week. I'm really hoping that doesn't. I'm really hoping that's an anomaly. Lots and lots of rain. Rain is okay. I don't want any more snow. I don't want any more hidden ice on the sidewalk. I don't want any more like that. But nevertheless, on the calendar, it's April, so feel free to have at. I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.